All right, well, welcome to the Green Burial Chronicles with Morgan Oaks. I am here with Jacob Robinson, and he is the Director of Conservation Biology for our Wildlands company. So Wildlands, they're kind of like the big company, and we're one of the companies off of that. So before we get into anything about what you do and all the fancy stuff, tell me a little bit about who you are.
My name is Jacob. I have a beautiful wife and two young boys. I've been working for Wildlands for pushing 22 years now,
Awesome.
certainly over 21.
Uh-huh.
I like to be in the outdoors whenever I can, whether it be hunting, fishing, hiking, all of the above. And my newest kind of hobby I've been into, I've been practicing jiu-jitsu for about 2 years now.
Very cool. What color belt are you?
White.
Okay,
Still.
you're just starting.
About 2 years in.
That's cool.
But it's been something I've really enjoyed and helped with my sanity and well as getting some good some good physical activity in.
I love that. Do your boys do it with you?
They did both do it with me, and now just my older son still goes. So
Very cool. Are you from this area, like Lincoln, Roseville? Where are you from?
I grew up about an hour north of here,
Okay.
Little city called Gridley. So
Yes.
you know Gridley?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So half hour north of Yuba
Okay.
City or so. So basically from
Yeah.
the greater general area.
Okay, cool. So you know Northern California. So like you know the stuff that's going on there, plants, wildlife, all the things.
For the most part, I have a pretty good grasp on it.
Okay.
Probably a little better grasp when I was doing the work for Morgan Oaks, since I'm stuck behind a computer a lot now.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the general part, I still have a pretty good handle on things.
Cool. Okay. Tell us just briefly, what does Wildlands do? So you work for Wildlands, like I said, who's the parent company of us. And so obviously we trust you at Morgan Oaks. You help us with all the things. But like, what does Wildlands do?
Wildlands is a mitigation property provider. So what we do is we have clients come to us that need biological solutions. Basically, that's how I like to look at us, as a biological solution company. And they will come to us and say, we need X amount of acres of riparian habitat. We need X amount of acres of vernal pools, or we need X amount of acres of desert land. And what we will do is we will go out and find private property that meets those biological needs. We will go out onto them, study them, do reconnaissance surveys for wildlife as well as plant communities. We will look at them and make sure that they are what the client needs to be utilized for their impacts. And then we will package those in a way that we present to the governing agencies and get approval for them to mitigate for their impacts.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's a very interesting company for sure.
And there's probably not a lot of companies that do what we do at Wildlands and Morgan Oaks.
There is
obviously.
not a lot of them. There's certainly none of them that do it as well as us,
Of course.
But there is a few out in the marketplace, but of course we are the best.
Of course. I love that. Great answer. Okay, so first things first, what brought you into the field of conservation biology? Because it's a very specific field, and then even more specific with wildlands, right? So
It is incredibly specific, and I got brought in. I went to school in the hopes and dreams that I would be a big game biologist.
okay,
And I've found out pretty early on that was not a very viable career option.
Okay.
So I actually had a roommate of mine in college that was working for Wildlands at the time, and he was a year ahead of me. And when he was getting ready to go on to other endeavors, I was just getting out of school, and he had recommended me, and so I got the job and never left.
oh my gosh, 22 years later, here you
Pretty
are.
close,
That's
yeah.
so crazy. Okay, so for those who aren't familiar, what is baseline survey work, and then why is that so important as we start a project?
So the baseline survey work is going out and seeing what is on site initially.
Okay.
So going and categorizing any kind of special status species are out there, any kind of veg communities, and just getting an overall a sense of what the property has. For some projects, it's more to see what's out there, to see what we want to protect.
Okay.
For a more of a development type project, it's to go out and see what kind of impacts may be incurred and what kind of mitigation would need to happen because of those impacts.
Okay.
So it's going out and doing a habitat assessment across the board and trying to categorize everything that we potentially could run into out there.
So you were part of the original team when we got this property to go out and say like, okay, we're going to do this survey and see what's out here, right?
Yep, and I looked it up. My reports were back from 2018, so it's
Okay.
been a while
Yeah.
back. But yeah, I was tasked with going out and doing the biological resources report as well as the wetland delineation.
Okay.
And those are two of the kind of major, but first off, reports that we want to do and turn in to start the permitting process. So I was able to go out there for multiple days and go and look at the different habitats and as well as go and map some of the wetland features and riparian features that were on site.
So cool. So cool. Okay. So what were, if there were any, which I know there were because we talked about it, any of the surprising findings or unique discoveries during those early assessments of the property?
Yeah. So one of the probably the neatest thing that I found out there was a handful of Native American grinding stones that were near the riparian area. I think there was 3 different locations or so that had multiple indentations on these big rocks that were out there that were pretty evident right off the bat that they were used as grinding locations. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah. So I think it's that area that's like barred off. There's like everybody always asks when we go by Bridge of Peace, like, oh, what is that? And so we give them a little history, but now our listeners can say, oh, I know. And just for the listeners, we did get permitted, so it was okay. And then our staff had to go through some special training too, to like, oh, if you find something, what do you do? Stop, don't touch anything, stop, drop, and roll. And so very cool. Anything else that was surprising out there?
That was by far the coolest thing.
Yeah.
I believe on the initial search out there, there was a beaver out there that was damming up the Dottie Ravine as well. So that was always kind of cool to see. But the grinding stones were by far the neatest.
Yeah, I don't know. The beaver was pretty cool. The guys saw a beaver, and to see a beaver on a picture versus in real life is wild.
They're big.
They're huge, and their front teeth are wild.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and those beavers don't mess around.
They don't.
They are fierce out there.
I always said if you wanted Rome built in a day, just leave it up to a beaver.
Yeah,
'Cause they could get it
seriously.
done.
I know. I think it's cool, but the guys are like, absolutely not. There's nothing cool about it. They wreak havoc out there.
They do.
So that's really funny. Okay. So how would you describe the general habitat at the Morgan Oaks property?
It was a mix of oak savanna, open annual grassland, and then there's the Dottie Ravine that runs through kind of the lower 1/3 of it. That's a beautiful riparian area.
Okay.
The open oak savanna, open grassland has a few vernal pools and seasonal wetlands scattered about, and that property had placer mining on it at one point too. So along either side of the creek, there's a bunch of what they would call placer tailings that kind of make an artificial wetland. They function as a wetland, but they weren't there originally. So there was quite a bit of that as well.
Okay. Very cool. Okay. You probably know this, and people ask us all the time. What native plant communities or ecological zones exist on the preserve?
So there's the riparian area that's very evident, full of trees, oaks, cottonwoods. A lot of the grassland that was there was a bunch of wild oat, which is always kind of neat because it was you don't find a lot of it fully intact as well. The seasonal wetlands and vernal pools have their own individual communities of plants. And that's kind of what distinguishes the two between. They function very similarly as far as their hydrology, but they have individual plant characteristics that you would characterize them differently on.
Okay. So what oaks are out there on the property specifically?
Specifically, there's valley oaks and some live oaks as well.
Okay. And some blue oaks too, right?
Blue oaks as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Everybody always asks us that. And I always tell my customers, I'm like, look, I have a 50-50 chance between a blue oak and a valley oak. And then a customer taught me how to like read the leaves.
Yeah.
So now I got it. But like I always said, I don't know. We're going to have to pull up, we're going to have to ask the Google. Okay. Are there any threatened, endangered, or special status species that the public should know about out there on the property?
The most likely ones you could encounter would be Swainson's hawk and or burrowing owl. There's potential for Swainson's nesting in the riparian area, and the uplands out there are good for foraging for burrowing owl and Swainson's hawk. Some of the upland mounds out there potentially have or would be able for burrowing owls to live in as well.
Okay.
I don't believe we found any elderberry shrubs on site, but that is something that could potentially encroach in the future. Vernal pool fairy shrimp, also a possibility out there. I don't believe we ever found any on site as of yet, but there's always something that could pop up. So
Okay, so what was the first thing?
Swainson's hawk.
Yeah, what is that?
It's a kind of medium-sized raptor that migrates through,
Okay.
and they're a kind of a unique species where some of them migrate from like up north all the way down to Argentina. Some of them
Wow.
stop over here and nest. They kind of vary and are somewhat sporadic in that way, but it certainly has potential for nesting on site. And the open areas are good foraging for both.
So we could be famous because we could have one of them out there.
You definitely could be famous for that
Okay.
reason.
That's so cool. We're gonna have we have so many bird watchers. The Audubon comes out and checks out everything. So I know people are gonna be like, oh my gosh, I'm going out there immediately. So yeah, that's really cool. Now I'm gonna have to go out look and see what it looks like, so that way if we're out there, we know it's there, whatever.
Yeah.
So, what kinds of wildlife are most found on the property?
I would say for the most part, birds are going to be your biggest thing to get some variety in out there. The riparian area is good for a lot of passerine birds, smaller guys that go through there. There's wild turkeys on the property, which I'm sure you've seen out there. The riparian area also has good perches for raptors, and like the open area is good for foraging as well.
Yeah.
So it's really good for bird life. Like the beaver we talked
Yep,
about,
the beaver.
likes to cause havoc down
Yeah.
towards the road, and I'm sure there's been deer on the property
Yep.
out in that area, coyotes, foxes. If you get lucky, you might be able to run into some rabbits, or
Yes, we do get those.
I'm sure maybe a skunk. Maybe
Yeah.
not so
Let's
lucky.
not so lucky on that one. I'd prefer not to see that. We have like one coyote that cruises around the back every now and then, and I call it a her. I mean, she's in the back doing her thing, but I like seeing them.
Yeah. In that area too, you could always run into a rattlesnake or other kind of snakes out in the area.
Yes. We so Jake, you remember Jake, right? We always get you two confused. He would catch them, kill them, and then cook them.
Oh,
Disgusting.
I've heard it's really good. I have not.
He says
actually
it's
tasted-
good, but it's gross. I'm
Tastes
sure.
like chicken. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
But yes, we do. So if you're on the property in the summer, you will find a rattlesnake almost always if you're searching or if you're in the outside bathroom, because they like to hang out there.
So they have been found on site.
They have.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Omar and Jake, thank God, are the ones that find them, but they have been found out there. So be cautious in the summer, listeners. Have you noticed any changes in wildlife activity since the preserve was established? I know you originally started out there, but I don't know how much we've noticed a change.
I have not noticed a whole change.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's been some influence of the offices being built and the pathways and that kind of stuff, which are good or bad. The pathways probably are a little bit more conducive for insects, which lead prey for other birds and
True.
other things out there. We haven't really categorized any differences. We kind of see what's out there, but we haven't done any follow-ups.
Yeah, and honestly, I would say, I asked that question because I think listeners want to say like, oh my gosh, now you started burying and you're building and you're doing all these things. And so now we're, causing animals to disperse. But I would say, honestly, once we settled, like, we don't do a whole lot. So our coyotes came back, the beaver came back. The deer, everyone's still there, but like, because we don't do a lot of building out there, right? And it's pretty desolate. So you're just there.
Yeah.
And people always ask, like, well, how come the coyotes don't dig up the graves or whatever, but they can't smell below like 2 feet. So that's not out there, people.
And they're typically going to be looking for easy meals. So they're not going to go through a lot of effort because there's a bunch of small rodents and mice and everything else around there for them to eat, and the rabbits and that kind of thing. So I can't imagine they'd be wreaking too much havoc out there. One of the cool things too, I looked up this morning, I knew there was a little bit of it around, but there's a ton of other protected lands, especially to the west, like to the tune of 700 to 7,500 acres of land that will not have any development too. So it's adding a piece to a really already established corridor right in there too. That's kind of a neat ecological benefit to that area.
Talk to me a little bit about that, because that is a question I get all the time is, okay, Steph, just like if you've lived in Roseville, that's why I ask you if you've lived here a long time, you're seeing all of these things being built. And, for me and my boss, we get that question all the time. And so it's like, how do you tell the listeners, hey, these things are not happening? So talk to me a little bit about what that means.
Yeah. So a few of the properties around are kind of older family farms that are in the cattle business and likely going to be grazed for the foreseeable future and typically pretty safe. The properties that I'm speaking of to the west, there's a couple of them that are owned by or at least managed by the County of Placer. One of the larger chunks is owned by a competitor that will go unnamed at this point, but certainly there's a lot of land right in there that will remain kind of in protection.
Okay. That's great. That's really good. I didn't know that. So thank you for telling me. I can use that now. Okay. Let's see. What environmental features make Morgan Oaks unique compared to any other open spaces? Is there anything in particular that would make us more unique?
Not typically more unique than the surrounding areas. I mean, as far as it being a burial site is very unique.
Yes.
That there is all these other open features. The vernal pools and seasonal wetlands are not unique to the area, but neat as a feature on this type of a business. So
Yeah.
that's really, really cool.
Yeah, no, I don't know of any other green burial cemeteries with a vernal pool and all the wildlife and
Riparian areas.
yeah,
running through.
yeah, or that special bird that you said that I'm gonna have to look up now. Can you talk a little bit about the wetlands, the creeks, and the water? So, a question, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but people always ask like where our water comes from. Where's that water coming from? Do you know the answer to that?
I don't know the specific source besides obviously up in the Sierras coming down.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know the exact drainage it comes out of,
Sure.
but one thing to know about those kinds of watersheds is they do feed into all their other ones. And even the seasonal wetlands, to a certain extent, are receiving water off of the Dottie Ravine that goes through the riparian area, and it kind of filters out from there and helps keep them full and adds to their hydrology as well.
Yes.
So it's certainly all connected.
So we have water year round in that creek. I mean, I would say yes, I'm always there, but there's always something streaming through there.
I will take your word for it.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've been out there, but if it's not surface flow, it's certainly subsurface flow.
Yeah, we
which is
almost
gonna contribute.
always have something. And then we have blackberry bushes out there as well, right? So that's really cool. I know people are always talking about that. So let's also talk about a couple other things here. So what environmental constraints or restrictions came into play when building this property or planning this property? Because I'm sure we're in California, there's a lot of restrictions, and it's just an interesting, different type of business. So anything that you came across?
Nothing specifically for me, but that's kind of out of my league.
Okay.
I kept more to the biological resources and the wetland delineations. I remember just being kind of on part of the team going through the process that there were a lot of, I don't necessarily know if the permits were hard, but they were just new for the people doing it, which always has some bumps in those roads, and trying to get everybody's head wrapped around what needs to be done specifically. So unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for you on specifics, but I know there was, it was a learning curve for everybody involved.
Yes, I'm glad I wasn't quite there yet, so I didn't have to go through that. But I know one of the big concerns was, you know, as you're burying bodies and the runoff and like, what does that mean? But luckily we didn't have any embalming, and because we don't have a vaulting system, so typically that would encapture everything. But I know that, you know, would that harm the wildlife or the plant life, or, you know, so those were a lot of questions that came into play.
I can imagine.
Because we don't have a lot of that around here. So, okay, so. Let's see. So from a biological perspective, how does conservation burial support the ecosystem?
It supports it in just keeping the space open. I mean, that's across the board. The biggest impact to these habitats isn't the actual things that get put on the site, is the removal of these open spaces where they can continue to migrate through, continue to have the prey abundance and resources in order to make a living out there. So the overall best benefit of it is the fact that it's staying open. And even though it's a different use type than it originally was, it's still close enough to it that it's providing benefit for these wildlife and the corridors that they're using.
Yeah, and we don't mess with their habitat really that much. I mean, if we're being really honest, on our 160 acres, you know, we're burying bodies 5 feet deep. We're putting a headstone maybe, but we're putting in a tree. We're adding to it. So we're not like taking away and like removing them, which I think is really cool. Or adding a bunch of buildings. We literally have 1.5 buildings really.
And most of the impacts like those are all going to be temporary.
Yeah.
And, you know, even temporary impacts, they may be an impact for some species, but any kind of disturbance is going to bring in insects and prey base a lot of the time. So different species will thrive on those different scenarios as well.
We have lots of lizards out there too.
They're good for things to eat.
Yes, I know. Okay, so then what long-term benefits do you expect for soil health, wildlife, and vegetation? I know we've kind of hit on a little bit, but what do you see for that?
It's kind of the same answer, just keeping things intact, letting the processes work the way they should, not having big implements in the way of water and water drainages so that the habitats on site and the riparian area can still function as needed.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people ask about irrigation out there, and we're trying to do as minimal as we can to not mess with the land. So while irrigation sounds really cool, and my guys would love that so they don't have to hand water trees, hundreds of them, it messes with the land and the species out there. So for those listening, that's why we don't do irrigation and mess with a bunch of things out there. Okay, so if you could share one thing about the land out there and what it means to you, or like what your coolest thing out there. I know it's been a while since you've been out there, but like, what would you want the listeners to know about Morgan Oaks?
That it's just a beautiful, friendly place where you can go and enjoy. And it seems nowadays it's getting less and less and less of those places that are not only, fairly pristine and have a lot of stuff to look at, but are actually open for people to go enjoy.
I love that. Okay. Where can people learn more about conservation biology and the work that like you do, your team, or like where would you obviously would tell them go to Wildlands website, right?
Of course.
Is there anywhere else that you would say, hey, check this out too? No, we're kind of the best. Yeah. Okay.
The best.
Yeah. So you could go to Morgan Oaks and see us. You could go to Wildlands and see that kind of stuff. And then anything you want to leave the people with, or like a fun fact about you? What do you want to tell us? Anything?
Go out and check the place out.
Yeah.
It's great to get out there. The trails are beautifully maintained. Lots of fun things to do right in and around the area to fill out the day and just get out there and go see it.
Yeah, we have 3 miles of walking trails, so you can come out. You can put your bird app on, and like we have lots of people that do bird calls out there. That's really cool to listen to. You can grab a bottle of wine at the place across the street.
Jump on the Placer Wine Trail and go get a beer. Or wine out there.
You can bring that over to Morgan Oaks, sit and listen to the birds, check out the species out there, the wildlife. But in any case, thank you so much for being here today. I know that our listeners love this kind of stuff, and so it's really special to have you because you do work with our team, and so that's awesome. So we appreciate you and your knowledge and just helping us in the early stages of development. So that's awesome.
Well, of course, it was a neat experience to be a part of.
Good. Well, I'm sure we'll have some more for you too. So
sounds good.
As the listeners, you can find us on Instagram, Morgan Oaks EP, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. Of course, our podcast is on all platforms. And then the last thing I want to say is just thank you for listening. Walk gently, remember deeply, and celebrate the legacy of life. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you.